Hi, back with episode 2 of On Music. Um, Still looking at Black Sabbath and kind of reminiscing over my personal experiences with the band and how I got into them, kind of progression of my encounters with their music and learning about them and kind of what it's meant to me over the years. Um, Last time I was talking about how this cat named Mark recorded me 4 of their albums. So that was good. I immersed myself in those albums. The first Black Sabbath album called Black Sabbath, and the third Black Sabbath album called Master of Reality. The eighth called Never Say Die, and the 10th called Mob Rules. So I listened to this over and over, and it yeah, it changed my life. My life was pretty young back then, so hadn't been very long life, but had already been kind of a somewhat painful life, I guess you could say. My friend JJ, he played me the Heaven and Hell album, the studio album, um, and I finally heard Children of the Sea, the studio version, and it meant a great deal to me. Um, but it didn't completely resonate. I mean, I had listened to the live one a bunch. I loved the song, but I hadn't really had the time to sit down, mano a mano with the studio recording and suss it out. So my mother amazingly bought me um, the the album on cassette. Yes, cassette was our kind of you know what a horrible flawed medium it is. It was. I don't know. I don't even think anyone makes or sells or distributes any kind of music on cassette anymore. Nor should they ever again. Um, I But anyway, I connected with that album, Heaven and Hell, heavily, and so much so that I was going through a rougher than usual patch at age 16, and um, you know, finally found a girl that liked me, and blah blah, and it didn't really work out, didn't really get very far. But of course, I took it all to heart and sensitive me, and I just kind of like gave up on everything, and I decided I was going to, I don't know, end it all. So my mom went out one day for the afternoon, and which she rarely did, and left me alone. And my dad was at work, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and chug a couple of bottles worth of aspirin and whatever other pills I can stand. I mean, I couldn't even stand to swallow pills back then, so I guess I was going to chew all of them. I don't know. Um, Seemed dramatic, seemed painless relatively. Um, and I listened to Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell over and over again, especially the first 2 songs. The first song, Neon Nights, which starts the whole album off with instantly relatable material. Oh no, here it comes again. I can't remember when we came so close to love before. Hold on, good things never last. Nothing is in the past. It always seems to come again. Again and again and again and again. Wow. So then we're on Children of the Sea, where, um, in recent years, I've read that Ronnie Dio described the lyrics as having some kind of ecological meaning, like it was like literally about the end of the world. But I didn't see it that way. I mean, I saw it as all that as metaphors. I saw it as representing any kind of loss, profound loss that one suffers through your life, and faced with the horrible, horrible, inescapable reality that it's never, never, never coming back. Last line of the song. Um, So I've got to say that this musical self medication of mine prevented me from going ahead with this kind of half-baked aspirin uh, suicide scheme, and I went ahead and forged boldly ahead. No, I mean I was really a mess for a long time, but I did. I was totally wedded to Sabbath, so some great came of it. Um, so anyway, I wanted to move on to exploring some other stuff, but I didn't have my first job yet. I didn't have my own income, so I was dependent on friends and the radio and whatever to get the music that I got. And occasionally, like with that guy Mark, somebody would tape me some things. Of course, by that time he was already off at college. He was like a year older than me, anyway. I think at least a year older than me. Um, but I cherish those cassettes and I listened to them endlessly. Um, and that summer, late that summer, after graduation, I got my first job at a grocery store near my house. And I one of the first things. Well, it's funny because on graduation, my my mom acquiesced to taking me to the local mall where there was a store called Record Bar. They had a really great vinyl selection, and they had a lot of albums on cassette, which I was just really into those cassettes, man. Um, but she bought me a Deep Purple, two albums on one, double sided cassette deal, and they're all double sided, but um, and Dio Last in Line. Well, she'd already bought me Dio Last in Line because I was actually listening to that at work. I mean, at school, my very last week at school, and but yeah, for graduation, I got the Deep Purple and I got the first Rainbow album with Ronnie James Dio singing Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. I don't know what one other album, but I don't remember what it was. But I didn't get any Sabbath stuff directly. So, but I was in that kind of cluster, that family of bands. I was leaning more towards the Deep Purple, more towards the Richie Blackmore side than the Tony Iommi side during that period. And I was really enamored of Dio's work with Rainbow. I had checked a live album on stage out of the library my senior year in high school, as well as some other albums, including Deep Purple, Shades of Deep Purple, and got heavily into those records. Um, so uh, I had these albums on cassette, and with one of my first paychecks, I picked up Dio Holy Diver, and I was planning to keep moving forward with more Deep Purple, Rainbow, Dio, Black Sabbath. There wasn't really any other Dio. He just had two albums at that time. But then, lo and behold, another album came out right at that same time, toward the fall of that year, and um, he was going to be touring and going to be coming here to Charlotte. So I decided that was going to be my first official rock concert, and it was. And I went with a friend that I'd met in an art class over the summer named Heather, and she took me there. We went to the Coliseum. Of course, my mom was freaking out, overprotective. Um, but anyway, we met a friend of mine, Derek, and his friend Jimmy there, and Heather immediately had a crush on Derek, and Dio was really loud, and I wasn't prepared for how loud, and um, I was a little disappointed. I didn't really like the way the guitarist Vivian Campbell did the Iommi and Blackmore material, and the thing is, they didn't do very much of it. No Children of the Sea. Very little of Rainbow or Black Sabbath material, and lots of the first three, only three Dio albums, that band called Dio, and you know, Um, when I get into the history of Black Sabbath in another installment, I'll discuss some of this, how the band's fractured and who was playing with who. What, you know. Right now, I'm just telling you as I kind of learned it as it was unfolding for me. Um, but anyway, Heather had left her car door unlocked, and someone carjacked us and took all my cassettes. I'd brought all the aforementioned cassettes with me, and they were all stolen. And then they locked her keys inside her car. So Derek, you know, helped us break into her car, and she gave me a ride home and lamented over Derek, and I lamented over my cassettes. Um, so when I got paid next, I went to Record Bar, but not the one near my house, relatively speaking, but one across town that had even better selection of albums. And I I replaced Sacred Heart. I had already bought Sacred Heart. That was the third Dio album. I replaced Sacred Heart, Holy Diver, Last in Line, and I replaced. I didn't have Heaven and Hell anymore. That was stolen. So I got this two albums on one cassette deal. One side was Heaven and Hell. The other side was Paranoid. So I finally had a copy of their most famous album, their best-selling album. Many consider their masterpiece because it spawned their three most famous songs: Paranoid, Iron Man, and War Pigs. And by this time, I had heard the studio album versions of those three songs, um, and I had heard a song "Fairies Wear Boots" on it as well late at night on the local rock radio. But the other half of the album, I had never heard any of them, not one lick. And so these songs like Hand of Doom and Electric Funeral, Planet Caravan, they just completely captivated me. The band was like extremely tight, much tighter than any of the albums I'd heard so far by them, except Heaven and Hell. So now there are two best-selling albums where they're the most tight. Iommi, Butler, and Ward were on both sides of one cassette. So yeah, I was happy, but to me it sounded great, but I wasn't exactly an expert on this stuff back then. I don't know that I am now, but I certainly know a lot more than I did, way back in the '80s. So, um, so I decided to kind of keep exploring Black Sabbath, and there was a little record store. Well, I told you about Ernie's record store where I bought Live Evil. Well, I got a job at the grocery store, which was only two stores down from that. So I would, stroll over to Ernie's every once in a while and get cassettes. Ernie's kind of had a pitiful selection, especially on vinyl, but the cassette selection was okay. And back then, I wasn't really that picky. I mean, I was easily impressed. I knew they weren't Record Bar, but damn it, they were right next to my work. So I did pick up um, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, um, which had a pretty big impact on me. It wasn't like the other Ozzy Sabbath albums that I'd heard, the other three or four that I'd heard up to that time. Um, it was more progressive. It was more melodic. It was structures of the songs were different. It had more texture. It had more feeling. The lyrics were, the lyrics are always top notch with Black Sabbath. When Ozzy was in the band, Geezer Butler wrote the lyrics, and the lyrics on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath were like next level lyrics. And to this day, there's songs on there, if not almost the whole album, that I can just listen to again and again and still get the same meaning from the songs and still marvel at the lyrics and the talent at work on that album. It blew me away. So my favorite songs were A National Acrobat and Spiral Architect. So Sabbath blew me away because they were a band that they didn't really have choruses so much as most bands. Like, in other words, their songs would have a title that often that phrase wasn't even in the song, much less a chorus, and they rarely had any choruses. Um, and they did have rhyming lyrics, so they pretty much, so they kind of kept that convention. But otherwise, lyrically, they were a huge break from really any other band that I was listening to at the time. Even a band that was pretty progressive like Pink Floyd um, was more conventional song structures, more conventional lyrical structures than Black Sabbath, and so really impressed me. Now, when Dio was in the band, they did have more choruses and more, have this had the title of the song in the song. So he was a little more conventional, even more conventional. Um, but those early albums with Ozzy and Geezer writing the lyrics, Ozzy singing and Geezer writing the lyrics, it was like the wild, wild west. I mean, it was unbelievable. And the stuff they wrote about, I mean, everybody thought they wrote about just the devil and Satan, blah blah blah, all the time, and it's like no. I mean, they did write about downbeat topics, depression and lost love, and but they also wrote about like politics and like nuclear war and science fiction kind of scenarios and apocalyptic scenarios and uh, drug addiction and just all kinds of like heavy downer kind of material. And but I don't know, their music cheered me up. That's I'd already kind of felt this way with Pink Floyd, but with Black Sabbath, I finally came into this whole realization that music that was really aggressive or really powerful emotionally and kind of downbeat and kind of what a lot of people would consider very sad or depressing music. It was cathartic for me and it cheered me up after I listened to it. Um, so that was kind of a lifelong mode that I fell into that resonated with me. Um, so shortly after this, toward the end of that year, I bought Black Sabbath Volume 4 on cassette at the aforementioned Ernie's, and that was it. I pretty much raided their Black Sabbath collection, so I had to turn to other places for that. But Volume 4 was kind of an extension of what I'd gotten from Master of Reality, the third album, which um, was real heavy, sludgy stuff that's still like insanely influential on all kinds of heavy music. And Volume 4 was a bridge, it was the album between Master of Reality and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. So it was a bridge, it had the sludgy, doomy, slow, grinding heaviness of Master of Reality, but it also had a lot of touches of the progressive stuff that was coming on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the longer songs, the changing song structures, ambitious lyrics. Um, yeah, another masterpiece. So I decided, I'd already decided, but I mean, I decided kind of in earnest that I was going to go ahead and get all of this stuff, on good old cassette. Um, so I also started replacing the ones that Mark had taped for me with pre-recorded cassettes of like the first album and Master Reality, Mob Rules, Never Say Die. This is before I got back into collecting vinyl albums again. I was just in that couple of year period where I guess from like maybe junior in high school to maybe year and a half after high school where I was just collecting tons of cassettes. And I don't know, like I said, what a horrible format. I don't miss it at all. Um, but I was still buying all this stuff on cassettes. This is still the pre vinyl era for me. Um, and I was still exploring like heavy bands and other kinds of music. I talked about some of this on my first on music thing, which was a more general thing and a discussion of some kinds of music that I like to listen to a lot nowadays regularly. Um, So the next thing that came up on my radar was the fact Black Sabbath was going to have a new album. And it's funny because after Live Evil, Dio quit the band, and I was kind of heartbroken. And I saw on vinyl, and this was before I switched from vinyl to cassette. I saw Born Again New, and there were some record albums at this grocery store my parents used to go to on Fridays, and um, there were a few albums that I wanted, and my mom would occasionally buy me one. And one I bought on vinyl was the first Cars album, and I think I bought the first Cars album uh, instead of buying Born Again. And the thing that turned me off of Born Again was the song titles. I had not heard any music from it. The song titles, and I thought they sounded very retrogressive, not progressive. It's stuff like Digital Bitch, Disturbing the Priest, Trashed. I was like, what the fuck is this stuff, man? I mean, I loved Ian Gillan with Deep Purple, but I thought, man, what is he doing to Black Sabbath? Why are they going in this horrible direction? It's like they were trying to live up to their reputation. I mean, they had like a demon baby on the cover. So it's like they were trying to live up to this reputation of being devil worshippers and, just heavy badasses, and that wasn't the way I perceived them, based on my experiences with them so far and what little I knew about them outside of their recordings. Um, but I was off base. A friend of mine, Doug Williams, who I mentioned in one of these recent videos, he was like, "Nah, man, these songs are great, man." And he like read me the lyrics to Trashed, and he was like, a big advocate. He was telling me I needed to kind of get over it, not be so narrow-minded. Man, Doug, you were so fucking right, man. You were right on as you were with a lot of things then and now. Um, so before I got to where I was ready to experience Born Again, though, I had known that the band had kind of fractured again after Ian Gillan left, and there wasn't really much left of the band. And I was collecting this metal magazine called Kerrang that I bought at Record Bar every month, and it was a cool British metal magazine, but it was a very British magazine, but it was really cool in that it kind of covered a whole spectrum of bands that would be of interest to its readers other than just heavy metal and hard rock. I mean, it covered heavy metal and hard rock thoroughly, but it also covered like prog rock and goth and related stuff. I mean, you could see articles about Hawkwind, Marillion, PIL, The Mission. I mean, and this was all before I knew anything about any of these bands, and so it really whetted my appetite for this material. Um, so, though by this time, thanks to Doug and also another friend of mine, um, I was getting into Marillion out of those bands. I still wasn't quite there with Hawkwind, but I wanted to explore Hawkwind because of the science fiction angle of their lyrics and the connections with Michael Moorcock, whose books I read in junior high. Um, but anyway, so this new album was not going to have Geezer Butler or Bill Ward, and I was like, what the hell, And they said it was originally a Tony Iommi solo album, and it got changed at the last minute from the record label to Seventh Star, and it had this kind of little title like Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi as the artist, which is stupid to me because it was like Tony Iommi was all that's left of Black Sabbath. Well, him and the keyboardist from the previous four albums, Jeff Nichols. Um, if they were Black Sabbath, then it would be featuring someone else, like the lead singer, Glenn Hughes. But for some reason, it was Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi. I never understood that logic, and I don't even refer to it that way anymore. I just consider it a Black Sabbath album. There's a to this day, raging debate over is it a real Black Sabbath album or not. And to me, it always will be. That's just because of the timing of when it came out and what I invested in it and what I got out of it, which was a lot. I mean, it was Sabbath acquiescing to the 1980s and doing like the pop metal kind of thing which was so prevalent that I wasn't that into. But they mastered it just as they mastered all these other, sub genres and sub genres. And Seventh Star is now was then and is now still a beloved album of mine. I think it has the greatest pop metal song of the '80s, the greatest power ballad, "No Stranger to Love." I can listen to that song endlessly. I like to sing that song. I think it's an amazing work. And this album turned me on to Glenn Hughes, who I really didn't know a whole lot about. Um, Somewhere around that time, I got an album. He was on called Phenomena, where he was the lead singer. Um, and then I knew he had been in Deep Purple playing bass. I had Stormbringer. I didn't realize though. I was really took me a long time to kind of train my ear with these things. It's like David Coverdale was the lead singer of Deep Purple after Ian Gillan, so I thought, okay, David Coverdale's singing all these songs. Boy, he's really got a range. Good Lord. But, I didn't know. Glenn Hughes was the co-lead vocalist, and David Coverdale was the co-lead vocalist slash frontman. Glenn Hughes was the co-lead vocalist slash bass player. I didn't realize they had divvied up the duties, when Ian Gillan left Deep Purple. I guess it was, really hard shoes to fill. Um, but yeah, so I was enjoying Glenn Hughes's vocals with Deep Purple and not even really completely realizing, what he wrote, what he sang, and gradually over time, that geekish part of me kind of began absorbing all this knowledge like a sponge. But it took a while to kind of seep in. It was not instant osmosis. So, um, Seventh Star. Yeah, so that's where I was with Black Sabbath, and that's where I'm going to leave off for this episode because I'm teetering close to a half hour. But I wanted to put something out there since I've been so busy over the weekend with Black Friday work related stuff. And I'll be back with chapter 3, and I'll talk some more about my experiences with Black Sabbath and, from the late 1980s onward. And eventually I'll get, in one of the episodes, I'll start getting into Black Sabbath, what they're about, their history, and a lot of misconceptions or myth conceptions, MYTH conceptions about the band. A lot of disinfo and misinfo still is prevalent, even in really fanatical Black Sabbath groups. One particular one that I'm in, it's an excellent group with a lot of members, like 90,000 members. A couple of ex Black Sabbath members are in it, but I still keep encountering the same kind of stuff. And the real truth of these things is so much more interesting than all these stupid rumors. I mean, I feel like I'm back in high school, back in college. Uh, let's set the record straight. There's one incredible website. I will try to link to it below this if I remember. Hopefully, I will. But in any case, I definitely will talk about it next time. And it's like the definitive Black Sabbath website. It's unauthorized per se. It's not official of the band, but almost all the band members are aware of it and have spoken with the webmaster. They know him personally, and he has set the record straight through extensive interviews with all of them, even sifting through their own contradictory stories where their memory is fuzzy, probably from an enormous amount of hallucinogens and other kinds of substances. So I'll tell you about that website next time. But anyway, take care and thank you for watching. Take it easy. Bye.